All right, what's up, everybody? We are live. Good Wednesday evening to you. Give it a little bit of time. Um, we do have a couple of work days up at the church. If you're able to help, go to Facebook. I'll post. I'll post a picture that our pastor posted on Facebook. I'll share it to our Instagram so you can see the times. But Tuesday mornings, Tuesday evenings, Thursday, also during the day next week. So look out for that if you're able to help, if you don't have anything going on. We're getting ready to meet back on Sunday mornings live and in the gym. So we've got to move stuff from the sanctuary over to the gym and get the gym ready for Sunday morning service. So we'll be doing that next week. So if you're able to help, come help with that. But tonight, I just want to talk about our role and our purpose in ministry. So often we think that just because if we're not a full-time minister, then we don't do ministry. Just because we're not a preacher or a pastor, we don't have to do ministry. It's not our calling. But our purpose and our ministry here on life on this earth is to make disciples. Jesus tells us that right before he ascends to heaven, for us to go and make disciples. And I want to look at how we do that. But first, I think we come up with a lot of excuses on why we don't. We come up with the if onlys. If only I was smarter. If only I knew more about the Bible. If only I knew more about God, I would be more willing to witness. What if somebody asks me a question I don't know? That's when you just need to be honest. You're not going to know everything. Only God knows everything. So there's going to be things that challenges you. There's going to be people that ask hard questions. Be honest. You don't have to be the smartest person to witness. What about if only I was a better speaker? If only, I get nervous when I talk to people. I'm shy. I don't know how to witness. What if I say something wrong? To realize that we aren't perfect and we're going to make mistakes. Moses was not a great speaker, but yet God used him to deliver the Hebrews out of Egypt. Used him to speak up against Pharaoh. So whatever your downfall you think you have, God can still use you. If only I was a better singer, then I could sing. I wish my ministry was in singing, but I can't sing, so therefore I'm not going to do any other kind of ministry that God may be calling me to do, because that's not what I want to do. Or if only I had more money, if only I had more resources, then I would go and I would witness more. And we realize that we come up with all these excuses just so that we don't go out and make disciples for whatever reason. We need to live with an urgency that people need to hear the gospel, that people need to hear of God's love, because that's what Jesus calls us to do, to go and make disciples. We limit what God can do through us by thinking we need more than what he has already given us. I don't want to say that again. We limit what God can do through us because we feel like we need more than what he's already equipped us with. If God is calling you to go and make disciples, he's going to adequately equip you to go and make disciples. What we have to do is have faith that what he has equipped us with is enough. And it is, because God says it is. And I want to look at John chapter 5, and I want to look at a few verses. And this is the story of when Jesus called the very first disciples. When Jesus went to Peter, James, and John and called for them to follow him for the very first time. Okay, these men were not disciples of Christ forever in their life. Before they met Jesus, they were fishermen. That was their trade. That was their job. That was their livelihood, was to be fishermen. They fished and then they sold the fish and made profit. That's what they did for a living. But then God called for a change in their life. And we're going to look at that towards the end of the service, is that God causes us to change. And when he causes us to change, he tells us to then go and make disciples. But let's read John chapter 5, verse 5. So they're fishing, and at this point they have caught nothing. They're having a cruddy day at work. It says this, and Simon answered, Simon Peter, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets. See, Jesus comes up to him and says, hey, what are y'all doing? Well, we've been working all night trying to fish. We haven't caught anything. Jesus says, well, cast your nets on the other side. And Simon Peter says, look, man, we've been at it all night. It hasn't worked. But if you want me to one more time, I'll do it. See, he was putting his trust, even though he might have not believed that anything would have worked, he still put his trust in Jesus enough to go ahead and put his nets down on the other side of the boat. Even if he didn't believe it was going to work, he still put his faith in, okay, I'll give it a shot. And sometimes trusting God calls us to forget about everything that we know and then just to fully trust in God. Because a lot of times what we know gets in the way of what God has planned for us because we think, because we know something that we know better than God. Just because you know a lot about a subject doesn't mean that you know better about your life than God does. These men knew about fishing. It's what they did for a living. Yet they hadn't caught anything all night. Then Jesus comes and says, hey, cast your nets to the other side. And they say, okay, we're pretty sure we know what we're doing, but we'll go ahead and do it. So let's continue reading. Verse 6 says this, and when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats, so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, depart from me, for I am a sinful man, and O Lord. For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. Verse 10, and also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid, for now on you will be catchers of men. And when they had brought their boats to the land, they left everything and followed him. Now this is some cool stuff. So Peter realizes who Jesus is and says, depart from me. I'm not worthy to be in your presence. I'm not worthy to be around you. I am a horrible sinner. But Jesus says, don't worry, Peter. I'm going to teach you to be fishers of men. I'm going to teach you how to be a disciple and how to disciple to others. And I want you to look at this very last verse that we read, verse 11, because it's a very key verse. It says, and when they had brought their boats to land, they left. What did they leave? It says they left everything and followed Christ. So let me just tell you this real quick. To be a disciple, to truly follow Christ, we have to leave everything behind. What do I mean by that? Our own understanding, our own knowledge, our own wants. Okay? We have to leave all that behind. They had just caught a bunch of fish. They've been working all night trying to make some money. Didn't catch anything. Jesus rolls up, tells them to throw their nets on the other side. They catch a bunch of fish. They could have made a lot of money off this. But they leave everything to go follow Jesus, to follow Christ. See, we've got to stop waiting for the things that we want and start working with what God has already given us. Because if we're just going to wait for things that we want so we can do ministry, we're never going to get started in ministry. If we're going to wait for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of knowledge before we go and make disciples, we're never going to start making disciples. We're just going to constantly wait. Do not wait for what you want in ministry. Work with what God has already given you in ministry so you can go and make disciples today. So we don't waste a moment of sharing God's love. We're not called to make disciples in the same way. And I think this is one of the key reasons why so many people don't go out and witness. Don't go and make disciples because we feel like there's only one way to go and make disciples. There's only one role in ministry, and that's the role of the pastor. So if I'm not a pastor, I don't have a role in ministry. If I'm not a pastor, I don't go and make disciples, but that's simply not true because God calls us all to go and make disciples. So the best way I know how to kind of go through this is to shift gears a little bit and talk about Power Rangers. I know that's a big contrast to what we were talking about, but we're going to talk a little bit about Power Rangers. Now, here's the thing about Power Rangers. Power Rangers were awesome when I was a kid. They were very popular, very cool show, and I don't think it's as popular with the kids today. So you might have not grown up with Power Rangers when you were a kid, but I did, and I just thought they were awesome. So let's just go over these different Power Rangers and their role within the team because they were a team. So first you have the Red Power Ranger. Now, the Red Power Ranger and I'm just going to be talking about the original series. All right, there's been like 82,000 different series of Power Rangers. So when I say what each color represents, it might not be for the latest version. Okay, I didn't keep up to date with it. But in the original versions of this show, the Red Power Ranger was normally the leader. All right, he was the one that others went to for answers. The others went to for guidance, for decision making. When there was a bad guy coming up, the Red Ranger drew up the game plan, okay, and everybody followed suit. He was the leader of the group, okay. Very important to have a leader in a group. A group without a leader, without any kind of guidance, will just go in circles, right? So it's always important to have a leader. Now, beside the Red Ranger, you always had the Pink Ranger. Now, the Pink Ranger was always the one I had a crush on, but besides that, the Pink Ranger was always kind of the one like second in command. Okay, she was the first mate to the Red Ranger, if you want to put it like that. She was there to help. She was a helper. She was always there if you needed something. She was the type that would give her shirt off her back for somebody in need. Okay, she was always there helping people. You see, ministry isn't just about preaching. It's about helping. It's about helping the community. That's why we have a food pantry. Okay, it's about being there for other people, and that's what the Pink Ranger was there for. You know, sometimes the Red Ranger would feel down or not have the guidance that he thinks he needs, and the Pink Ranger would step up in those times and help lead and help the Red Ranger out. We need helpers in our lives. Then you have the Blue Ranger, and the Blue Ranger was always kind of the smart, nerdy one. He had the most intelligence within the group. He was the logical guy. You know, if somebody wanted to go in guns blazing, he was the guy that would advise, well, maybe there's a more logical tactic that we can use. Okay. He helped with the technical issues, with the computers, with all those things. And he was more introvert than anybody else on the team. And you say, well, I can't witness to people because I'm shy. Well, that's like saying the Blue Ranger can't help the team because he is an introvert and he is shy. But the Blue Ranger was a vital member of the Power Rangers because of his intelligence. And even though he was shy, he was able to use the gifts that he had to help the team. So it doesn't matter if you're introverted. It doesn't matter if you just genuinely don't really like talking to people. You can still go and make disciples. You can still go and help other people. And then you always had the Yellow Ranger. And in the originals, this was also a female, and she was always like the morale booster. She was the encourager, okay? She was probably one of the most patient ones on the team. And how vital is that for us in ministry and disciple making, for us to have encouragers in life, okay? There's not a single person that has lived a life on earth that has not felt discouraged at one point or another. So it's always important for us to be encouragers, okay, to encourage other people. Now, some people are better encouragers than other people, just like the Yellow Power Ranger was a better encourager than the other Rangers. There's going to be people who are naturally better, but we can all make a point to be better encouragers in our own personal lives. And let those who are great at encouraging encourage us. Because sometimes we just don't like to admit that we need encouraging. Then you have the Black Power Ranger. Now, the Black Power Ranger was always one of my favorites because he was kind of laid back. He was like the class clown of the group. He was making jokes. Even when jokes weren't appropriate at the time, he was cracking jokes. He put his foot in his mouth a few times. So I always liked the Black Ranger. The Black and the Red Rangers were always my favorite. But he was the jokester. He could make you laugh. He was easy to be around. Can I tell you, sometimes in life, we just need to be able to laugh. Because life gets serious. Life gets tough. Life gets hard. And we get so focused on the seriousness of life that we miss out on the joy that's going on around us. And sometimes we just need that person in our lives that makes us laugh, that can just instantly put a smile on our face. You know, we don't need a room full of preachers, okay? Because they'll just be talking, and that's it, right? We don't need a room just full of helpers. We don't need a room full of comedians or a room full of highly intelligent people. We need a room full of these mixtures of people that can work together. And then the last Power Ranger was the white one. And this was white or green. He started off as the Green Ranger, and then I don't remember why, but all of a sudden he was the White Ranger. But he was always kind of like the strongest Power Ranger. In the very original series, all the other Power Rangers kind of like joined together to make a super robot looking thing. And then the Green Power Ranger always had his own super robot. So he was like the alpha kind of the team. He was the powerhouse of the team. He was strong. And we need those people that are strong in our lives. And where this Green Power Ranger is probably more physically strong, but we need people who are spiritually strong that we can lean on, that are emotionally strong, that we can go to in times when we need encouragement, when we need these things in our lives, that we just need somebody to talk to. We need somebody that can understand what we're going through. And so all these Power Rangers are important. All these Power Rangers had a purpose on the team. If you watch Power Rangers, comment who your favorite Power Ranger was, why. I love reading comments, so just do that if you want. But every single Power Ranger had a purpose on this team, okay? And I know Power Rangers is probably a silly analogy, but it's the best I had. It's either that or Ninja Turtles, and Power Rangers had more to them. So every member had a purpose on this team. Every Christian has a purpose in discipleship. Okay? I encourage you to seek out your purpose in discipleship. And I want to read one verse and then we'll close. If you have any questions, feel free to ask any questions. This can be the Ask Barry hour. Whatever you have, and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. Just like I said before, I don't know all the answers. If I don't know an answer, I'll find the answer for you. But I just want to read just one verse and then just talk about it real quick. Romans 12 verses 2 says this: "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." We are to be transformed. Our lives after salvation should not look the same as they did before salvation. If we're claiming to follow Christ, our lives should look totally different than those who claim to not follow Christ. We aren't supposed to wait for the right time. The right time to be transformed by the renewal of our minds is right now. The right time to follow Christ is right now. It's not something that we're supposed to wait on. We are to go and make disciples now. God will use you in special ways. You are unique. Don't compare your ministry to the ministry of others. Don't compare the way you make disciples with the way other people make disciples, because God's not going to call you to minister to other people the same exact ways as other people that are in your lives. They might be similar to some, but they might be very different from others. And if they're very different from others, we can't compare or contrast because God's calling us to do the same thing. But we just witness to different people in different ways because people respond in different ways to different methods. So God may be calling you for a very specific method because the person that you are to witness to, that's the only way that they will respond. But if we're waiting to have the skill set to use a different method, then we're missing out on what God's calling us to do right now. He's calling us to do it right now. Do you trust God's purpose for your life? Do you trust that God can use you? This is what I want you to do. This is your challenge. And tomorrow, by tomorrow, either tonight or tomorrow, I'm going to post a link on this video for a great website to do spiritual gift surveys. I know we've done them in the past, but maybe you weren't able to do it then, or maybe you have grown and matured in different areas in your life, so your spiritual gifts may look a little different now that you're able to answer questions more accurately. So I just want to challenge you to take a spiritual gift survey because it points you. It doesn't give you spiritual gifts. All right, spiritual gifts come from God and God only. These surveys, what they do is they help point you in what God may be calling you to do. All these different things are ways for us to go and make disciples, whether it's preaching, shepherding, hospitality of some sorts, service, evangelism. There's teaching. There's many different spiritual gifts, but it helps point you in the way. Oh, that's how God is calling me to go and make disciples. That is how God is going to use me in this life, and it helps us to be able to go and do those things that God is calling us to do. Help us to not be shy, not to back down from what God is calling us to do. So, guys, just know this. I love you. I hope that you are having somewhat of a fun time. I know COVID-19 is starting to die down, hopefully, and we start getting back into public. I hope, June 7th, I hope I see a lot of y'all here at church Sunday morning. There has been no decision yet for Shed. We're going to wait and kind of see how church on Sunday mornings go, and then we'll start trying to make a decision for Wednesday nights when we can meet again. Camp is, as of right now, just assume that camp is canceled, and then we'll make if there's a decision on doing a camp at a later date or a fall retreat or something, back to school, something like that, I will let y'all know. We should be meeting in the next couple weeks for that. So if y'all don't have any questions or anything like that, we'll go ahead and end this. But if there is a question that you think of tonight while you're in bed or in the morning, feel free to jump back on this video and you can comment at any time. So I love y'all. I hope y'all have a great Wednesday night. Talk to your friends, invite them to Shed Live, and I will see you next week.